initially, like I said, that this event and this webinar was supposed to be a really small kind of little event, but it's actually worked out really well in terms of what we're experiencing right now, because Disconnect to Reconnect is all about tapping back into your inner self and learning more about yourself and more about how to experience life and bring more clarity in and bring more happiness to yourself. So I think with what we're going through now, and I can see that there's a lot of people working from home, and there's a lot of people kind of whose day to day have been affected by what we're going through. I think this opportunity to disconnect to reconnect is going to be really powerful for us. So yeah, let's crack on. So disconnect to reconnect, as I said. First of all, you're probably wondering, what am I going to learn? So what I am hoping to share with you today is a few bits of knowledge that I've picked up along the way on how to live life with more clarity, how to live life with more understanding, how to bring more happiness into your everyday life, and how to, I guess, be more present in everyday life. So these are the kind of overall topics. Obviously, I hope it's going to be quite free flowing. I want you guys to use the chat box as much as possible. If you've got questions you want to ask questions. There's no wrong questions to ask. Like, every question is a good question. That's what I believe. And I'll try and make sure that every question that gets asked gets answered as well. And I also want you guys to share like things in the chat box as well. It doesn't have to be a question. You can just, if you agree with something, if you don't agree with something, like the whole point of this event, when it was going to be a live event, was I wanted it to be really, really interactive. So I wanted it to be a group discussion. I didn't want it to be me talking for an hour, which it has now turned out to be. So I want you guys to be part of this as much as me. So does that all make sense to everyone? If it does, hit like 1111111 on your keyboard. So I know that makes sense, and I can trust that you guys are going to be involved in this whole process. Yeah, so basically this is a webinar because I thought this would be the best way for us to connect, the best way for us to try and do this face to face, and everything else. So first up, about me. Who am I? So I am Alex Manzi. As I said, I am the host of the Dream is Disease podcast. And the Dream is Disease podcast is about hearing the stories of inspirational guests, trying to understand a bit about their mindset and what it is they do to bring things into their day to help them live a better life, essentially. And there's 4 parts to it. There's interviews I do with people. There are in focus sessions where I do small, like share my own experiences, I guess. Travel diaries when I go away, and finally a little feature called The Corner, where I get together with a small group of people and we have a really open and honest discussion. My journey. So my journey is, I spent a lot of my life being very unhappy, and it took quite a big moment for me to realize that. I had a breakdown, and I had to do a lot of work on myself in terms of understanding what happiness was, understanding what I am. I had to go through a whole process of fully diving into myself, understanding myself, so that I could bring myself out of this dark place that I was in. If any of you guys have experienced that, just type 11111 in the chat box, and also let me know if you can still see and hear me, because I know there's been some problems. Okay, well, there's a lot of ones coming in, so we all know what it's like, right? We can feel overwhelmed by life, we can feel a bit confused, and you kind of feel like you're in a dark place. So yeah, a spiritual awakening, as Miles put it. That's exactly what I had, as a spiritual awakening. So my journey then led me into creating a podcast, because I wanted to create a space where people could, learn from other people's experiences. They could learn that, they're not alone in what they're experiencing. They're not alone in everything that's kind of going on in the world, and that essentially there is a way past what you're kind of experiencing. So that's kind of my journey. And that is also my why. My why is I want to help people. I want to inspire people. I want people to understand that you can bring yourself out of any situation you find yourself in life by going through some of the things that we are going to discuss today. So slowing down in life is the first thing I want to discuss. And as I said, guys, if there's any point where you have a question, feel free to write it in the chat box. If there's anything you want me to re-explain, please write it in the chat box. There's no wrong or right answers here, okay? This is all a group process. I know I'm doing all the talking, but this is a group process, and I want you guys to ask questions. I want to be able to answer them. So please feel free to use the chat box as much as possible, even if you're just saying hello. So slowing down in life. So those of you who've been following me over the last couple of months will know that I just come back from a traveling trip of 2 months in South America. And if you've been listening to the podcast and following me on Instagram, you'd have probably heard or seen some of the stuff I was getting up to while I was out there. But one of the most important things I learned is the importance of slowing down in life. And what I really love about traveling, and this is stuff that I was starting to bring into my life before traveling, to be honest, is it gives you the opportunity to slow down. It gives you the opportunity to step out of the day-to-day, to really just appreciate the small things in life and really take a step back from everything. And that taking a step back is really powerful because it allows you to almost process and assess everything that you've got going on in your life, right? So for me, even over like the past few years, where I'd say that I've been at a really, really top level, I've had moments where my form has dipped, right? So what I have to do in those moments is take a step back and realize the bigger picture, and take a step back, not just out of life and out of living, but out of thinking, because sometimes I feel like we can overthink too many situations. And what we tend to do is we tend to like put our thoughts into like a mental washing machine, and we just let them like spin round and round and round and round and go a little bit crazy, and we get caught up in that, and it kind of begins to take over our life. So one of the things that I really like about traveling is that slowing down, that taking a step back, like taking things at a different pace. And I think, like I said, I think with what we're going through at the minute and people spending more time at home and working from home, it's going to allow us to plug more into that slowing down of life process, which isn't a bad thing. It can be a good thing. So, and one of the things that I really, really always preach about and I always implement in my life is the 1% rule. So the 1% rule, what is it? So it's a simple thing of growing 1% day to day. And no matter what it is you want to do, whether it's, something really external, like learning a new language or learning a instrument or writing a book, like as long as you put in 1% every day, you're going to see growth over time. So once I started realizing that external thing about, okay, if I put 1% into these projects every day, I can see the outcome as I go along. How can I implement that into my life and my thinking? So I started to really break things down and look into my life and go, right, what are the things that I can start doing 1% every day of? And I started looking at the really simple things like meditation, like exercising, the things that really benefit me. And throughout time, I've gradually added little 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. And I've started to see the outcome. We had Phil saying that he's been doing some traveling too. And whilst he was away, he was getting towards the best version of himself. And when he got back home with pressures, he felt like he lost it all. And do I have any advice on how to reconnect with that and keep progressing even amongst a busy schedule? I think, Phil, what I would say is it's about looking into your life and seeing how you can implement things. So what are the things that you were experiencing while you were traveling, and how can you implement those into your life? It could just be really small things. It could be things that you could just be doing from your own perspective, ways that you were looking at the world. What was it about traveling that really helped you tap into that mindset? So just, I would say, yeah, I think just try and understand why you felt that freedom and try and bring that freedom into your life, which we'll come to later in this process. So the next thing I want to discuss is understanding happiness. I just want to check, can everyone still hear me and see me? Because my Wi-Fi is doing crazy things. If you can, say yes. If you can't, say no. Okay, good. We got you. We're good. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, so understanding happiness. So the first thing about understanding happiness for me is learning and beginning to understand that happiness can only happen now. You can't be happy in 10 minutes. You can't be happy 10 minutes ago, because you don't live in those moments. You only live in the moment that we're experiencing now. So the moment that we're experiencing now is my really bad Wi-Fi, but me also presenting these slides to you and you guys watching it. That's what we're experiencing now. So the only time you can be happy is in that present moment. The rest of it doesn't exist. So understanding happiness is all about understanding of the present moment. And it's about letting your worries of the past and your worries of the future not hold you back, because we've all been there. We've all had those moments where we're worried about our jobs, and especially now, we're going through such turmoil where people are worried about work, people are worried about what they could have done. They could have saved more money like 6 months ago, whatever. But I think you just have to understand you can only react to what you're living through right now. And that's a really important thing when it comes to happiness, because happiness for me isn't just about trying to be happy or I will be happy when, because it's about actually, letting yourself just be in the moment and really fully be present. And as Joshua said, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now is a perfect book to read if you want to understand that more. And it's also the understanding that the thoughts that you're having create your reality. So every moment that we live, right? Every moment that we live, we have a thought. And that thought comes with an emotion attached to it. Okay. So they come together. Then that could be a thought that comes with a good emotion or a bad emotion. But if you just let that thought pass through, there'll be another thought that comes in behind it that may come with a good emotion or a bad emotion. And that's the way that our brains work. Okay. So the thought that we're having in that moment is what is creating our reality. So if you're having a thought which comes with a bad feeling, the moment you're living is a bad feeling. So everything around you is going to seem bad. Okay. So pleasure versus pain is the next thing I wanted to discuss, because this is a really important thing, right? There's something that I really realized last year was essentially the relationship between pleasure and pain, right? So what do I mean by that? So pleasure and pain, they exist in the same space, okay? They are the same thing, essentially. I say they're the same thing, but they're different ends of the same thing, right? So if I take, for example, what have I got as an example? I should have planned this better. Okay, this drinks map, right? It has two sides, okay? One side's pleasure, one side's pain. They both exist because they are part of the same thing, right? I can't get rid of one side and just leave the other, because as long as I try to get rid of one side, the other side's always going to exist. So they both exist as part of the same thing, right? So once you can understand this process of pleasure and pain, and this can relate to hate and love, this can relate to happy and sad. They're all joy and or anger and love or whatever. Like they're all part of the same thing. And yes, Festin pointed out very well that I did an in focus session on this. If you want to check it out on the podcast, you can. I explain it in more depth. But they do exist as part of the same thing, right? So once you understand that, like, you will then start to begin to understand that the more you search for one thing, the more you're exposed to the other. So the more I go searching for pleasure, the more I'm opening myself up to pain when the pleasure doesn't happen, and vice versa. The more I enjoy, or the more pain I want to feel in my life, and we don't always do this consciously, we do it subconsciously. The more pain we want to experience in our life, the more we enjoy the feeling of creating the pain in our life, which is why some people walk around and everything is moody to them and everything's dark and bad, because they actually begin to enjoy on some level to chase that feeling of pain and sadness. Okay, so this goes down to everything, right? This goes down to trying to be happy, right? If the more you try to be happy and tell yourself that you should be happy, the more you're creating unhappiness in your life, because the more you don't get to that happiness that you're trying to reach, the more you actually start to feel unhappy. Does that make sense? And then beyond that, the best thing to do is, once you start to understand that relationship between happiness, between sadness, between love, between hate, between all of the things I've just been going through, once you start to really understand the relationship between all of those, yin and yang, exactly. The next thing that you should be understanding is just see things as they are and accept them as they are, because the second you can see things as they are and you can accept them as they are, the pleasure pain scale shrinks and it becomes one again. It doesn't become two ends of something that you're chasing. It becomes part of the same space. It's fine to feel happy and it's fine to feel sad. It's fine to feel anger. It's fine to feel hate. It's fine to feel love. It's fine to feel joy. It's fine to, be told no. It's as much as it's fine to be told yes. Okay, so as long as you can accept those things as they are, that whole pleasure pain balance brings itself back to how it should be. At this point, does anyone have any questions? Please let me know. And also let me know if that is making sense to you, because that's a very important one, and one that I know can take a little bit to get your head around. So if you have any questions, then please let me know at this point. Miles has said, it reminds me of that saying, something along the lines of where perception perceives, well, it's easy for me to say, perception perceives perspective, maybe the other way around. Yeah, it is. It's everything is kind of a duality, the law of duality, as Jishu said. Exactly. And everything comes into balance one way or the other, and everything exists as one big thing. Like the life that we live is one big thing. Everything is connected in some way. Okay. And that's where the pleasure pain balance comes into it. And like I said, the more you can understand that, the better it is for yourself, because you can then start to accept the things that you see and feel in your life. So this leads me on to non-attachment. And this is one of my favorite parts, right? Because non-attachment is something that I really had to go through a lot last year, right? There's a lot of stuff that I was experiencing that I found myself attached to in life. And I wanted to, bring that out. And Emily's already celebrating the non-attachment theories, because it's a really, really powerful one. And for me, it was about the stories that I was telling myself, right? So this was about the stories I was telling myself about who I was, what my job was, how I lived my life, how I expected myself to live in the future, and all these things, right? It all kind of links together into this big story I was telling myself. And the more I was telling myself this story, the more attached I became to this story, right? And the more I didn't want to change things. So I got to a moment last year where I had a big dip, as I mentioned earlier, and there was a lot of things going on, and I was left in a state of confusion. And I was left in a state of confusion because I was attached to ideas. One of the main ideas I was attached to was this idea of the business that I wanted to build around the podcast and everything I do. I wanted to build a coaching business. But I also had an opportunity to take on some freelance work and save some money to go traveling. And I was telling myself this story of like, no, you can't do that, because you have to build this business. You have to do this thing. You have to create what you want to create. You have to do this. You have these bills to pay. You have to, you've got this flat. You've got all these things in your life that you have to keep up to date with, and you can't change that. It's wrong, blah, blah, blah. These are the stories I was telling myself in my head, right? So what did I do? I started to work through it, and I started to pull myself away from the attachment of these ideas. And I stopped telling myself these stories, and I ended up moving back in with my parents, which is where I still am now temporarily. And I went traveling, as you would have heard earlier, right? So, but I had to undo all of the work in my head that I was telling myself to make myself, allow myself and free myself to take not the risk, because it wasn't a risk, to take the initiative to do actually what I wanted to do, right? So Phil was saying he got really attached to the friends that he made and became really sad when he parted ways when he was traveling, and he learned to celebrate the time he had together rather than be sad that we had moved on. It changed everything. And yes, that reminds me of the quote saying, don't be sad that it's come to an end, be grateful for the fact that it even happened in the first place, or something like that. I probably butchered it. But yeah, that's a very powerful quote, and it's exactly what this is about. And it's about understanding that life is dynamic, because at the end of the day, life moves, life changes. And I think, again, looking at the current situation we're all going through with COVID or coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, 6 months ago, no one had a clue that this was going to happen, but it's happening now, and everyone has to change and be dynamic. We have to look at the way we live in our lives. Serious things are changing for good and for bad. And that is the experience we have of life. It's dynamic, it's changing all the time, but we find ourselves not being adaptable to that because we're so attached to the ideas that we've built up and we've told ourselves over the years. So I think we once you get used to this idea of non-attachment and you can pull away from the attachments that you have, you can live a more dynamic life. You can be more free to change. You can be more free to adapt. And I think that's where the beauty of life really comes in. And it's that idea of not being scared of change. Too often we are scared to make a change because we're so comfortable feeling the things that we feel that we don't want to compromise that and take a risk by making a change. But more often than not, if you're making the change from the pureness of inside yourself, like that change is always going to serve you. And as long as you can take away all the attachment, you can go through the principles of understanding happiness that we spoke about before. As long as you can do all of that, then you will be able to live with more clarity and more happiness. It's I've experienced it myself, and I know people who have experienced it as well. So this isn't just make believe stuff. This is just trying to undo a lot of stuff that we've kind of grown up with, right? So what have we got? Editor says all of this very much resonates with her own internalized narratives of things that she could and couldn't do and how she limited her own experiences. Mubina said it's painful to watch others go through their attachment, especially attachment to you when people say they can't live without you. That is very, very true. That is very true. I've had that. I've probably been on not really on the other side of that, but I felt attached to relationships I've had. And that doesn't necessarily mean romantic relationships. That means relationships with friends, for example, and being attached to that idea that, oh, this is my friendship circle. But it's fine to take a step away from that, because when you do, you create the opportunity to meet new people and experience new things with different people who might be more on the same wavelength with you. And I know if Emily's still watching, she's experienced this as well, because I was watching the interview of her and my good friend Sachin yesterday, where she was talking about the same thing. She's saying yes. And we get attached to these ideas because these might be people that we've been friends with for so long or whatever it is. But it's fine to take a step back from that friendship circle and meet new friends. Like some of the friends that I met while I was traveling or have met in previous travels are going to be friends for life. And I know that because of the deep connection that we've built up in that time. And if it doesn't happen that we're not friends for life, that's also fine, because we shared such great memories already. What has Angie said? Angie has said, would you say it's fear of letting go or the unknown that people find it hard to detach? I think it's both. I think we fear letting go because of the unknown. Okay. But going back to the pleasure pain thing, right? The pleasure pain thing, if you don't let go, okay, that fear of the unknown is always going to be there. All right. They exist in the same space as well. If you don't let go, that fear of the unknown is always going to be there, because it's the unknown. And the only way to know it is to experience it. So they exist in the same space. We create that problem within ourselves. And that problem is only created by the thoughts that we bring up and the feelings that we have when we are experiencing those thoughts. You see what I mean? So can you start to see how all of this begins to tie together? And Nadira has said it's important to make new friends out of your main circle, for sure, because there's so much out there. There's so many people out there. There's people that I met literally a month ago who I probably only shared a few hours with, but we connected on such a deep level that we continue to stay in touch and we continue to feel friends. And I continue to feel that bond with them because we had such a great bond over such a short period of time. And like I said, that's fine. We might not see each other for 5 years. I don't know, 10 years. We might even see each other next year. You never know. But it's about understanding, and that's fine. It's fine to meet new friends like that. Festima said attachment is the root of suffering, and that comes from Buddhism. And it does, because it goes to the pleasure pain thing. We attach ourselves to the pleasure of feeling this thing that when we don't feel it anymore, we feel the pain because we attach to the pleasure of the feeling that we think we have around that thing. It's all concepts that have been made up in your own minds. So the next thing I want to discuss is about loving yourself. And I think, again, this ties in a lot to what we're experiencing now, because to love yourself, you really have to start to understand yourself, and you really have to start to spend this time alone. Like the more time you spend alone, the more understanding you'll have of yourself. And if you start to find that you're not comfortable spending time alone, that means you need to spend more time alone to get comfortable with yourself. Because once you become comfortable with yourself, then nothing else can really rock you, right? I got to a point in my life early last year where I was so happy, and I still am so happy and so content with my life that I don't feel anything can rock me. Like I was supposed to, right? So before all of this coronavirus stuff happened, right? I was coming back from traveling. Like I said, spent 2 months in South America. I was supposed to go away again at the beginning of April for a month, and then I was going to go away again beyond that for 2 months. All of that has changed. All of those plans have changed because of what we're experiencing, and we're probably going to be on lockdown and all of it. But yes, I'm upset. Yes, I'm disappointed, but I'm getting on with it because that is the situation. And that's because I'm so comfortable within myself and my ideas and my thoughts and my feelings that those things can't rock me too much. I allowed myself a day or two to feel down about it and the idea of it, not happening anymore. But now I am more than happy with doing the things that I'm going to be doing, like this webinar, like I've got more opportunity now to record more podcasts. I've got an opportunity to create more content, to write more blogs, to all of these things. There's so much out there that I can do, and that's all by learning about myself and spending time alone to understand the things that I really enjoy. And one of the things that I learned really early on in my journey after my breakdown was that I started to see life as like, well, my life before the breakdown as like a house made of Lego, right? And this house of Lego was put together in the wrong way. And when it all came crashing down, that was the breakdown. That was the moment for me to then reevaluate it, learn about myself, and actually look at myself and go, okay, how do I want this house to be built now? And start building it brick by brick, 1% at a time, brick by brick, in the way that I wanted it to be built. And that is kind of what spending time alone and looking into yourself can do for you. You can really start to understand the benefits of understanding yourself, because it's the longest relationship you're going to have in your life is the relationship with yourself. So you better make it the best relationship you're ever going to have. So it's worth that investment. Joshua said, one of my favorite sayings I live by is responsibility equals ability to respond to something and events. You choose the emotion. And it's true. Like you kind of, your view and your perception of an event is what causes the feeling that you have within it. And it goes back to the thought and feeling relationship, right? They come together. So if your thought about something is a bad thought, the feeling is going to be a bad thought. If your thought about that event or that situation is a good thing, the feeling is going to be a good thing. So we kind of have to learn to take that responsibility for ourselves. Miles has said, I'm learning about being comfortable. And yeah, it's a great process. Miles, what are the things that you're doing to learn about being comfortable with yourself? And anyone else, if you want to chip in here, what are the things that you've done in your life to learn to be more comfortable in your own company and with yourself? Let me know in the chat box. So one of the things that I found was doing things for me. So this goes back to doing things for me. This comes back to, I guess, the idea of looking at my life and going, okay, what are the things that I want to do? What are the things that I want to bring into my life? So one of the things last year that some of you will know is that I started to learn to skateboard. Why? Because I always was kind of obsessed with the idea of skateboarding and the culture around it, but I never got around to getting on a skateboard and learning how to do it. And this is just a silly example, but it's not, because I love it. And I have started to do that for me. I'm 32. Like, you should not be learning to skateboard at 32. Actually, you should. If you want to learn to skateboard at 32, do it. Okay, do it. But what I'm saying is, you have to learn about the things that you want to do for yourself. So one of those things for me is when I made that decision I was talking about earlier about whether I started to work on the coaching business and the kind of thing that I wanted to build off the back of having the podcast and all the stuff that I do versus do I go traveling, I had to decide what is the thing that I really want to do. And the answer to that was traveling. So I took that decision to do that thing for me. And I think once you learn to be comfortable with yourself, you find more comfort in doing things for you and learning to do that. Right. So I'm getting a lot of questions coming in. Let me go through some of them. How do you get past the fear of uncertainty? I think the way to get past the fear of uncertainty is just to do it. Whatever it is, just do it, because it's uncertain because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And whether the outcome is good or bad, it doesn't matter half the time. It's more the fact that you've gone and done the thing. And that's something that I've learned through traveling as well. It's like, you can make a decision one day to go and do this thing or to go and do that thing or whatever it is. But it's not about what you're doing. It's about the experience that you have while you're doing it and what you learn from that experience and what you can bring into that. So that's what I would say about the fear of uncertainty. Don't be scared to do something because you're uncertain about it. Actually push yourself to do it because you'll grow off the back of it. What have we got here? Emily has said, based on what I said about being so secure within yourself, that things that rock you more, I feel the same. That's good. Nice. Well done. Do you think it can get to a point where sometimes we're so desensitized to things, though? I worry that I'm training myself to be neutral regardless of what happens and that it can come across a bit cold. Yeah, sometimes it can. And I feel like, I think with me, sometimes maybe it does come across cold. But I think people also know me and understand me that I'm fairly laid back anyway. So there's not a lot one way or the other which I'm bothered by. And if something like, I can't help, if something truly moves me, it truly moves me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's just how I've learned to live my life. Like I live off of my feelings now. And if something feels good, I do it. If it doesn't feel good, I won't do it. If I feel like something has moved me, it's moved me. If it hasn't, it hasn't. And I think that's a really important thing. As a really good question there from Emily. Like, I think you can feel like you're being desensitized to something, but who's to say you're being desensitized? Like, that's just because what someone has maybe told you some news and you've reacted differently to what they expected you to react. That's their problem for putting that expectation of your reaction on you. Like, your reaction is your reaction. You shouldn't have to feel like playing up to people for the sake of it. You should do things for you, as I said earlier. Caroline has said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that they are not uncomfortable anymore. So they travel, going to concerts alone and going to cinema alone. Yeah, they're perfect things. Going to cinema alone is a really good way to start spending time by yourself. And even going out for dinner, that might be a bit weird to some people, but take yourself out for a nice meal. Table for one, never hurt anyone. What else have we got here? Meditation, traveling, self-care routines, acknowledging that I am worth the time out to do things that nurture myself, all things that Phil has done to spend time alone. Nadira has said, I've started saying no to every social event. Instead, one in every 5 invites, I will stay home or go and do something alone. And I'm 31 at skateboarding. There's no shame in that. Good. That's what I love to hear. But yeah, I agree. I think you don't have to say yes to every social event. If you don't want to go, you don't want to go. Don't go. Go to the cinema by yourself instead, or stay home and read a book, or whatever it is you want to do. That you have to do the things for you. Jishu has asked when I started podcasting and coaching. Do you know what? Save that question till the end, because at the end we'll do a more general Q&A. For now, I just want to keep on topic with the things that we're going through. So back to loving yourself. It's about taking ownership of your time. At the end of the day, you have chronologically in a day, okay, there's 24 hours in a day. Although the only moment we're living in is now, there are 24 hours per day, right? And how you use those 24 hours are up to you and only you. And you can only decide that each moment, right? So you have to take the ownership of your time and how you want to spend it. Do you want to spend it being comfortable with yourself, finding clarity, being happy, living in the present, being in tune with yourself? Or do you want to spend it being worried, being anxious, being unsure about things, fearing uncertainty, being uncomfortable in situations? And I think the more you can dive into yourself and understand yourself and apply some of the things that we've discussed here, like, the more you can take ownership of your time and feel confident in taking ownership of your time. I think that's a really big thing, is we don't feel confident taking ownership in our own time sometimes, and that can really be not beneficial for us. So I think we should look to take more ownership of our time if we feel the confidence in doing it, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who control our lives, right? No one else does. We are the ones who dictate the outcome, who feel the feels, who go through the things. So if you can take ownership of your time and do the things for you that you really want to do, then ultimately you're going to find yourself in a really good place. Dave has said, before we move on, I try and learn something new. Try and learn something new every January. 2 years ago, I learned to stand-up comedy, and I've done 50 gigs now. Last year, I learned transcendental meditation for a week, and that's transformed my life. Wow, Dave, that's incredible. I love stuff like that. I'm very similar. Like, every now and then, I just go, right, I want to learn to do this. So I've got a Rubik's Cube by my bed. Last year, I decided to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and I taught myself within a couple of weeks how to do it, and I haven't done it since, but I was really happy that I did it. One day I'll come back to it. At the minute, I'm teaching myself Spanish. I'm using all the language apps. I'm chatting to Spanish-speaking friends. I'm watching things in Spanish on YouTube. I'm trying to really get a gist of things. So I think it's really good to also learn something new and push yourself into those new areas and out of your comfort zone. And then this is the final slide, actually. So the final slide is about finding freedom in life. So hopefully everything we've spoken about will give you a bit of an understanding on how you can find more freedom in your life. There's 3 principles that I always talk about, and those of you who have listened to the podcast or have checked out some of my content on Instagram or whatever probably heard me say this before. But the 3 principles that I live my life by is recognize, accept, and grow. And what I mean by that is, in any situation in life, take my situation, when I was in a bad place, the first thing that had to happen was I had to recognize I was in a bad place. So I spent many years not recognizing it and not understanding what I was going through and what I was putting myself through with depression and anxiety. So it's not until you recognize what you are going through that anything can happen, right? And once you've recognized it, the next step is learning to accept it. And I mean, truly, deeply, like, fully accepting it. Like, don't fight against it, because again, you create that tension, you create that pleasure versus pain dynamic that we spoke about earlier. Okay, it's all about recognizing what you're going through and truly accepting it. Like, it's absolutely fine for me to have been depressed and for me to have crazy bad anxiety, because that's what I was putting myself in that moment in time. And it wasn't until I could fully accept and let go of the idea of what I was putting myself through, instead of beating myself up about it, that I could then go on to the third step, which was growing. And the growth only comes after you've truly managed to accept everything that you've been through, right? So there are three principles that I live my life by: recognize, accept, and grow. And that sits across every situation in life, whether it's something deep, whether you're working on a personal project, whether you're I don't know, want to make a big decision about moving house or whatever. Like, all of that stuff fits into those three categories: recognize, accept, grow. Does that make sense to you guys? Is there anything there that you want me to explain further? Do those three principles make sense to you? I hope you're writing them all down and writing them on your arm, on your wall. Put them somewhere where you can always remember those, because they're so important. They've been really game changing for me. And then the next understanding is really about understanding that freedom is not a destination that you reach. It's a way of living. You can't just go, right, I want to live with more freedom in my life, because you're putting it as a destination. You're creating it as a goal, an end goal. Okay. And the only way you can live with freedom is to live with it. Like, it's something that you do. It's a way of living. It's not a destination. It's not a goal. It's not a thing. Like, every single one of us right now, no matter what we're going through, no matter what we're experiencing, we can decide right now to live with freedom. And that freedom means taking away all the attachments, taking away all the stories, taking away the pleasure, pain. No, Nadira, no one can see you, don't worry. Taking away everything, right? And living with freedom. And that freedom is not just the freedom of lifestyle. I'm talking about freedom in your mind. And the second you can really recognize and understand that, then you really have, unlocked a lot of the stuff. Exactly. The journey is the destination. The destination is not what you're trying to get to. It's about the journey. And that is really where the destination lies. That's exactly it. It is a way of living, and freedom is something that we can all live with any given moment. Because remember, like I said, we only live moment to moment. The only moment we're experiencing is now. So you have to ask yourself right now, what is stopping you from living with freedom? Answer that. Huh? What is stopping you from living with freedom? And that is going to be your thinking. And that is going to be when you create more thinking and more thinking and more thinking, and you find yourself in that metaphorical washing machine of thoughts that go round and round and round. Instead, you have to let the thoughts just flow, let the feelings flow, accept everything for what it is, take away the attachment, take away the stories, all of the stuff that we've spoken about, and that's where you'll find freedom. So to finish with, I've got this quote which I was saying a lot to myself in the last few weeks, and it's: life is about finding satisfaction in the simple pleasures in life. Because if you're always searching for perfection, you'll never be able to appreciate what's in front of you. And I had this conversation with a friend while I was away, because there's people I know who, no matter what they do, it could be better. It could be this, or no, I wouldn't have done it that way, or this kind of person I mean, right? So, and I see those people, and I understand. Cool, it's fine to want to have things better, or whatever it is. But if you're always searching for perfection in things, how can you ever fully appreciate what you are experiencing? And there's simple things I love in my life. Like, there's very simple things. Like, I love having breakfast in the morning. I don't know why. I just love it. Like, it's a good start to the day, and I love having breakfast and a coffee. And that sounds really simple, but that's a moment in my day that I really enjoy. And that's because I want to find satisfaction in those things, because when I'm having my breakfast, I can fully appreciate that moment instead of worrying about other things, right? So I really want you to take that away. If there's anything to take away, is the stuff that's on this final slide: is recognize, accept, grow. Freedom isn't a destination you reach, it's a way of living. And it's important to find simple pleasures in life, because if you're always searching for perfection, you will never be able to appreciate what's in front of you. got a lot of action going on in the chat here. So what have we got? So Emily has said, don't wait till you've reached your destination to enjoy life, enjoy the journey to your destination. Exactly. And I'm not saying, guys, it's a bad thing to have goals. Like, of course, we all want to have goals. We all want to better ourselves in life, but don't get caught up on what the end goal is, because if you get caught up on the end goal and chasing that end goal, all you're going to do is when you get there is you're not going to enjoy it, because you're going to want to chase the next thing. So if you can enjoy the journey to that goal, you're fully going to appreciate everything you experience along the way, good or bad. Nadira has said, I have an excellent book to share with anyone. It's called The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russ Harris. So relevant to everything you've mentioned in this chat. It's a bit wordy, but so useful. I've heard of the book. I haven't read it. It's a great recommendation. I'm going to add it to my list. If anyone else has got any book recommendations, then feel free to write them down. Also, in this moment, if there's anything you want me to re-explain, if there's anything you want me to answer, if there's any questions you have, just type them in the chat box now. I'm going to write some book recommendations in there whilst I wait for some questions to come in. So if I'm just sitting here, someone said I was definitely a Buddha in another life. I would love to have been a Buddha in another life, trust me. I'd love to be a Buddha in this life, to be honest. I'm going to write some book recommendations down below, because I'm being asked now by some people some book recommendations. So I'm going to write them down. This is the chance now to think of any questions. If you want to ask a question, now is the time. If there's something you want me to re-explain, or if there's another topic that I haven't touched on you want me to talk about, now is the time to do it. If there's book recommendations you want to recommend to everyone, write them down below. Whatever it is, now is the time. I'm going to write my 3 books down. Ready? Let's go. So the first one is The Awakening of Intelligence. You're going to have to forgive me for the spellings. I'm typing this really quickly. By Jiddu Krishnamurti. Sorry, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Amazing book. It has everything in it that I've spoken about, basically, but in even more depth. The next one is The Alchemist, or another book called The Celestine Prophecy. They're 2 great books that I read. I put them in the same bracket because they're very, very similar in terms of the type of book that they are. Like, if you've read The Alchemist, you'll know it's a kind of narrative about a little boy, and it basically ends up having a very deep meaning to the story, and Celestine Prophecy is the same. Emily says she's just finishing up A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. It's very deep, follows on from The Power of Now. Yes, this is a great book. I've read that. I've got it on my shelf behind me. If you like that, Emily, I'm telling you now, you will love Krishnamurti's stuff. Like, seriously, go and check out his books. His books are so good. I've actually got one next to me here, which is like a daily, it's called The Book of Life, a daily like meditations. You read one a day, basically. But he's got so many books. It's amazing. And then the third one, I was going to write A New Earth, but Emily stole my shine. I'm going to chuck that in. So I'm going to write them again. A New Earth, A New Earth, Celestine Prophecy, and Awakening of Intelligence. Done. Oh, what? Apparently, can you see them? I've just written them in. I'm going to say them again. A New Earth, The Celestine Prophecy, and The Awakening of Intelligence. Okay, people can't see what I'm typing, but they are there. So please check them out. Let's see what questions came in while I was waffling. When's the next event? Miles has asked. I don't know. I might do another one of these because I'm going to spend a lot of time at home. So I might link up again with John and the guys at General Assembly and Fire and put in another one of these and talk about some more topics. So if there is stuff that you want me to touch on, then please let me know. Phil has asked for any tips on staying motivated for self-development during times like these. I think the best way to stay motivated is to take everything day by day. Don't worry about the end goal, because when you get too caught up in the end goal, you can't appreciate what it is you're doing. Okay, so for me, you should really and truly just focus on things day to day. Be motivated to do the things that you are doing in the moment. That is the key. Be motivated to do the things you're doing in the moment. Take it step by step. Use the 1% rule that I spoke about earlier. focus on just growth by 1% at a time, because that's when you really see true deep growth. Recommendations on how to start a podcast, as Madge has asked. The only recommendation I have on starting a podcast is just start it. It doesn't matter how it sounds. Wait, just start the podcast and figure the rest out from there. That's what I did. I've got a few more book recommendations. Ego is the Enemy is a great book. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, most powerful book that Festim's ever read. What else we got? Angie has read The Alchemist and Celestine Prophecy. Read between the lines. The message within those two books is incredible. Exactly. People can't see my recommendations. Nadira is to do more webinars. I will. Angie has said Celestine Prophecy, she advised to read it twice. What is the typical type of audience that I attract? Typical type of audience I attract really is anyone who's willing to open up their mind and understand more about themselves and have positive vibes. That is it. So if that's you and you want to check some stuff out, then that is what I am about. So this is my thank you slide. So guys, look, thank you so much for joining me today. You can keep up to date with me on Instagram at I am Alex Manzi. You can also hit me up on email if there's anything you want to ask, alex@thedreamersdisease.co.uk. Please do stay in touch with me. Please feel free to message me. I love connecting with people. I love chatting to people. I have a few more projects and stuff on the way, which I will keep you updated by via my Instagram. You can also check out the podcast. There's plenty of amazing conversations on there. It's called Dreamer's Disease. Check it out. There's loads of stuff. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight. Sorry again for all the problems with the Wi-Fi and everything, but we got there in the end. We solved the problem. We made it through, and we're here. So big love to you guys. Take care during these times. Thank you for locking in and spending this time with us. And yeah, we will look at possibly doing another one soon, maybe covering some different topics, or we'll kind of reformat it and make it a little bit different, because I really love the interactiveness from you guys. It's really great. And I'm glad that you guys found it useful. If there's anything that you do want to connect with me on and ask me about, then do hit me up on Instagram at I am Alex Manzi, and also email me alex@thedreamersdisease.co.uk. A big thank you to Fiverr and to John and the General Assembly team for helping me put this together. And yes, I will keep you updated and look to do more of these and keep stuff going. And there's going to be plenty of content on my podcast over the next few weeks, because there's not much else to do. So be sure to check that out and everything else. Much love. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys soon. Thank you all.